In this video, we're going to take a much closer look at DUTCHSINSE and try and understand what he's doing in his methods of predicting earthquakes, and see if we can see whether or not he's actually really trying to predict these things or if he's gaming the system.
January 1st, 2017, at the Central Italy location, mid-range 4 finally hit. So, one day beyond where we were looking. So, technically, Crete is the island right below the red arrow here. So, watch out there for the potential of a 5. And then a little bit of loss of steam as the pressure comes up and around the bend. And it'll hit back in Central Italy again. This time with an upper 4. The time range on that, the time transfer from the Mideast to the Mediterranean region, is usually 2 days. So today is the 1st. By the 3rd, we should be seeing a new round of activity come in. Over here in the West Pacific, we have 2 more days to go in my watch for a potential 7.9 earthquake. Where? Well, just north of where we're seeing a large swarm of 5s take place today. But I'm looking at the North Philippines, right here where our arrows meet, where our bend is. We're also watching for a noteworthy earthquake to strike within the next 1 to 2 days up here where our red arrow is off the coast of California, or Oregon, California, but more like the tip of the red arrow right here, going down to the Gorda Escarpment that goes east and west. And it should be in the 5.5 range. So this means the area in between the 4.8 and the letter D is primed. And the halfway point between those two zones takes us north of our catcher's mitt position at this point, back to our red arrow. And we would look for a potential of up to a 5.3. Now there is a potential, a slight potential, to go up to 6.3. So the chances are it's going to stay below the 6th threshold down to the south as well. That's good news. But as of tonight, I have to issue a new warning for the coast of Japan. And the magnitude warning we're going to issue on it, luckily, isn't going to be as large as the 7.9 we're looking for to the south. However, it does have the potential to go 1 to 2 magnitude larger than the 4.3 down here in Fiji. Yes, and that of course brings us into the coast of Japan. Eastern coast of Japan, most likely near Tokyo, maybe to the east-northeast, south of the coast of Honshu, or very close to the coast of Honshu. Most likely striking out to sea this time. Potential to go up to 6.3. How much time? 3 days, 72 hours from now. So that puts us on to the 4th. By the night of the 4th, I should be reporting to you that the larger of the earthquakes struck, okay? So that's for Japan. As we go further west, we have another silent zone that's developed out, and that's between where Mount Sinabung is, and we have earthquakes now striking there. Middle point, following our red arrow, off the south shores of Indonesia. Magnitude 6.1 potential lies between these two earthquakes in the middle fulcrum point in Indonesia, where our red arrow is. Okay? The tip of our red arrow. And that's going to be within 72 hours or less. Usually the transfer time is 2 days. As we go west, let's get into Nepal, let's get into Asia. But it's right here at the bend, and we only have to add the 4.6 with the 4.2, and a 4.6 plus a 4.2 equals basically a 4.8. And so, but I'm looking more like for that 5.3, maybe a little bit higher, 5.5, to be striking. Where? Most likely up here at the Colombia-Ecuador border again, right where our tip of our arrow points into where the previous 4s currently exist. So that'll be happening within the next 2 days, 48 hours. It is 10:01 p.m. Central Time on January 2nd, 2017. Well, if it was the only earthquake, we would be able to determine our location based solely upon it, and it would put a large earthquake in the vicinity around the deep earthquake up to a few thousand kilometers away. That encompasses New Zealand and over to the west into Papua New Guinea. Every time we've seen a new deep 6.3 strike, it's usually followed within the week, 7 days or less, with a 7.9. We've seen it happen 3 times now. Now, I would like to remind everybody that last night we issued the warning for the area where the red arrow is here at New Zealand. Lo and behold, the arrow was hit, and it was hit by a 5.1. And this is a double warning. So north of the island has the potential to go up by 1 magnitude from this deep 6.3. Secondly, the plate boundary in between the North Island and the South Island needs to watch for at least 6.0 activity. And we hope it would be less. We hope it would be a swarm of 5s. But most likely, the plate boundary will be struck. Plate boundary right where you were struck before. So south of Wellington, basically back in the swarm location, and it could go up to 6. But I'm leaning towards more heavy movement to the north of New Zealand, back by our red arrow again. Okay? So get the warning out to the people in New Zealand. You have to watch for a double whammy. So the 6 should come first, or near 6, and it should be striking at our plate boundary. Well, we were looking for a mid-range 5 to 6.0 earthquake. 6.1 potential, and here it is, and it struck right at the red arrow. Also, I would like to point out the 4.0 earthquake we were looking for to strike in Italy, it hit. It hit. And it'll hit back in central Italy again, this time with an upper 4. First things first, 5.5 should be striking at our red arrow. After the 5.5 strikes, and that should be within the next 48 hours, we're also watching for a noteworthy earthquake to strike within the next 1 to 2 days. Well, we issued a warning 2 days ago. You remember we issued the warning for North Peru, Ecuador, correct? Going up to the Colombia border. And we said, watch for a large upper 5. And so, but I'm looking more like for that 5.3, maybe a little bit higher, 5.5, to be striking. The spot we warned, North Peru, hit. So you can cross that one off the list, but there's a new round coming in. And this one's going to be bigger. So it should strike up here to the north, and then we should see pressure transfer over to the east. So first things first, it could go, like I said, up to 7.0 and or 7.3, I'm sorry. The reason, 1 magnitude to 2 magnitudes larger than this deep earthquake. 10 p.m. Central Time on Tuesday, January 3rd, 2017. You'll see me talking about that deep 6.3. You see it raised high off the globe here. That was yesterday's main earthquake, the main player for what we were going to look for over the next couple days. Well, guys, this morning, a 7.3 struck right next to the 6.3 to the west of the letter D. And we issued a warning for an area to the west of the letter D for our first round of movement to strike, and we said it would be between 7.3 and 8.3. If you know someone in New Zealand, or if you're down in New Zealand yourself, please listen to what I'm getting ready to tell you. Every time we see deep earthquakes up to the north, up near Fiji, it usually translates out with 2 different events. First event is that the plate boundary between the North and the South Island that you see marked with a red line going across it, Okay, that plate boundary tends to be hit usually first before we see movement strike to the north of the island. Now, you may remember 2 days ago I issued a 72-hour warning for eastern India at Bangladesh, right? Well, this is Bangladesh at eastern India, where the 5.5 is, and I mean right there. Then, over to the east, the other location we warned, so if you add those two together, it equals 5.6, 5.7. More like a 5.6. And what did we warn for? Go back and watch. It's spot on magnitude-wise. Basically a 4.8, but let's just take it to 5 so that the people there can just understand what we're talking about. 4.8 to 5.0, and I'm more leaning towards 4.8. Again, like I told you, we're watching for a 5.5 and 6.0. They will either be separate events or they will combine together into a 6.1. 6.15, so basically 6.2. And it should happen within the next 48 hours. We're also watching for a noteworthy earthquake to strike within the next 1 to 2 days up here where our red arrow is off the coast of California. As I told you, by the 7th into the 8th, we're going to see this all flare back up, and we're going to see a near 6.0 strike down here in South Europe, most likely near Crete in Greece. Technically, Crete is the island right below the red arrow here. So watch out there for the potential of a 5. So today is the 1st. By the 3rd, we should be seeing a new round of activity come in. If you're going to see a 6 down here at Cyprus and Crete, well, that means you could go back up at least into mid-range 5. Yes, mid-range 5. And that would be, let's see, let's get our days on this. It's already the 4th overseas, so 4th, 5th, 6th. By the 7th into the 8th, we have to re-increase the warning for central Italy to be up to mid-range 5. The earthquakes in the West Pacific are related to the earthquakes in the East Pacific, even though professionals have said they aren't. It is 10:01 p.m. Central Time on Thursday, January 5th, 2017. Okay, this is crucial because we talked about this over the past couple days, and it looks like pretty much what we were looking for has struck. Now, I was looking for a 6.0 earthquake to strike here, and if we go check the magnitude list, the New Zealand agency has this at 5.3. Many of the stations reporting anywhere between mid-range 5 and upper 5. So, if we go with the 5.3, that's fine. I would say more like 5.5. So, I'm about a half magnitude off. Location spot on, time spot on. So it just got hit, and it got hit by a half magnitude less than, or up to 0.8 less than, what we were looking for. So that's about a full magnitude less than what we were looking for. So if that's going to hold true, then that means a full magnitude less will strike to the north. So instead of a 7, we'll get a 6. And a deeper 4.5. Well, look where the 4.5 struck, guys. Remember we issued a warning for right here at the tip of Sumatra? Well, a deep 4.5 is struck there and a deep 4.7. So if you add those two together on their own, that equals about 5.0. This means that Sumatra needs to be put on alert along with South Indonesia. So we're going to look for the potential of a high 6 at least. Well, I hate to say it, but it takes us right into South Tokyo. Okay, just south of Tokyo. So if we go just south of Tokyo, we add the 5.6 plus the 5.0. That equals 5.7. You're just adding another point onto the greater increase. It takes 10 5s to equal a 6. So if we add a 5.0 to a 5.6, it's literally just going to take it up by 0.1. And we watch here, and it should be within 48 hours or less. you can basically call this one a 5 right here at the Nepal border, and then you can call these mid-range 4s. So if you take the 5 plus the mid-range 4s, this is already taking us up to about a 5.1, 5.2 energy. But take a look at it. After 5.1, 5.2 energy, again, add the 4.8, 4.7, 4.6. It takes you to like right at 5.2. Look what struck to the west of there. A 5.2. Right along the plate boundary. This is Iran. You may remember we issued a warning for a 6.0 to be striking between Crete and Cyprus. We are still looking for a 6.0 range earthquake. It could be 5.9. But strike between Crete, here at the red arrow, and Cyprus, the little island over here to the east. It's taking possibly a day longer than I was originally expecting. But then again, we issued the warning for this full week, and we still have another day and a half, 2 days to go. Technically, Crete is the island right below the red arrow here. So watch out there for the potential of a 5. So today is the 1st. By the 3rd, we should be seeing a new round of activity come in. So keep watch. South Europe in the Mediterranean between Crete and Cyprus. That will immediately be followed by activity up to the northwest. And I told you guys I was going to give it till the 7th into 8th for that to occur. Well, it's going into the 6th now, which means we only have a day more to go into the 7th, 7th into the 8th, one more day. I mean, it's the 6th overseas, guys. So, again, they're like already, 7 or 8 hours ahead of us. So, all right, so keep watch. Don't let your guard down. It usually hits, and if it doesn't hit right when I'm looking for, we still have to give it another 12 hours just in case I'm 12 hours off. Each volcano is equal to a 5.0 earthquake. I've already computed that myself. It's just a rough rule of thumb I've applied. It's an arbitrary number. I'm sure there's going to be people who disagree. Unless it's a big one, like up at Bogoslav, then that might equal about a 6. And I told you guys, additionally, this was 5 days ago, that we were watching here for a 7.0 potential. So first things first, it could go, like I said, up to 7.0 and or 7.3, I'm sorry. Looks like we're going to have to cancel that. And we're going to cancel it because all those unexpected new blasts. But again, every time I cancel these warnings ahead of time, I usually end up regretting it. So, taking it down from a 7 to a 6. And we're going to take it from Central America, where Central America meets South America, and we're going to take it up here right off the coast in between Guatemala and Mexico. Going further down to the south, it's a little bit easier since the volcanic eruptions to the south have now stopped. Where's it going to strike with the 5.9? Should strike right here. Just, here, let me get it on the map. Let me turn these down. See where our letter D is. And we have a volcano here. And in between our volcano and our letter D, it's a very small silent zone. It's the Chile-Peru border, actually, right at the bend. So watch for that 5.9 potential to strike there, and we'll watch in the next 48 hours. There was an eruption that occurred in Nicaragua, and it was from a volcano that hadn't shown any activity, so I don't know the name of it off the top of my head. And yeah, Nicaragua, new eruption. We warned for that this week, by the way. I don't do volcanic forecasts. But we did warn for Nicaragua to be on watch for a new volcanic blast. (10:01 p.m. Central Time), Friday, January 6, 2017. Probably what I'm going to start doing, just so people understand, when I name an area and I name it for 5 days and it doesn't hit in that 5-day time period, I consider that an earthquake forecast miss. What I'm going to start doing is what the meteorologists do, which is go down to a watch instead of a warning. So I will issue a warning for an area to watch within a certain number of days. After, if it doesn't hit within those certain number of days I'm looking for, we are now going to extend out for an additional 3 to 4 days.
We now have to summarize the earthquake performance by DUTCHSINSE. And unfortunately, he changed the rules of the game midstream as I was analyzing this, and it threw a wrench in the cogs. So basically, his predictions are now 10 days long. Yeah, 5 days for what he considers his prediction, and then he goes into a watch period for 5 days after that. The more I watched his videos, the more I analyzed what he said from night to night, and then went back and double-checked what he said to try and fact-check things, the more I realized that he fudges what he says. He doesn't really say what he said before. He twists it and changes it a little bit so that it looks like he's more accurate than he really is. Maybe that's just human nature, but it is misleading. What was really telling for me was looking at the statistical probability of him being correct on each prediction. Now, to do that, I went and downloaded the last 10 years of earthquake data from 2006 to 2016, and I computed for each area, for each zone that DUTCHSINSE made a prediction on, how likely other earthquakes of that magnitude would be to strike that zone during the forecast interval that DUTCHSINSE uses. So the probabilities that you see down here are the probabilities that he would be correct on his predictions. So let's look at this first one here. This first one says he has a statistical probability of being correct 100% of the time. Why is that? Because the frequency of earthquakes at magnitude 4.1 in the central Italy region is 3 days per earthquake. And if his prediction spanned from January 1st to January 3rd, which is 3 days, then the chances of him being right is 100%, because during that 3-day period, statistically, over the last 10 years, there has been a magnitude 4.1 earthquake in that region that he was predicting. So he had a 100% chance of being right. Now, the reason he missed this one is because his forecast for the magnitude of the earthquake was too high. He was predicting a 4.7 magnitude earthquake. That's 6 times or 7 times, not 6 times weaker than a 4.1 that was observed. 6 times weaker is quite a significant difference in my mind, so it's marked a miss. Although the location that he chose to predict for was pretty bang on. You can't get much closer than 69 kilometers for a location error. However, even that isn't really as truthful and telling as you would expect, because there are so many earthquakes of this magnitude that happen in that region, in that specific little area. So he happened to pick the area that is statistically significant for earthquakes in Italy. So one of the other things I did was I produced a contour map of the frequency of earthquakes around the world. It didn't contour quite as properly as I wanted it to, but I'm just showing you the preliminary results here. They're still valid. So the yellow contour line here is in days. 6.316 days, there's a magnitude 5 earthquake every 6.316 days, anywhere inside that yellow contour. Anywhere inside the blue contour, they happen every 9 days, a magnitude 5 earthquake. And look down here in Indonesia. Every 15 days, there's a magnitude 5 earthquake right off the north tip of Indonesia, which is very frequently used by DUTCHSINSE and even Ben Davidson for their earthquake predictions. The entire area of Indonesia and Timor and the surrounding region is very active seismically, even going up into north of India and north of Saudi Arabia and into Europe. The frequency of earthquakes, 1 magnitude 5 every 18, 19, 20 days. And if we look at the situation along the western side of North America and South America, it's no different. The area where Ben Davidson and DUTCHSINSE predict the most earthquakes is in this region here, because it's statistically significant. They have a magnitude 5 earthquake there every 6 days, every 9 days in Central America, more than one a month up here in towards Italy, and about one a month, more than one a month in the western coast of the United States and Canada. And then it increases the closer you get to the Aleutian Islands to about one every 10 days, one every 9 days. So you can see how easily it would be for somebody to game the system by just using statistics like this, finding out when the last earthquake was that struck a region, and then waiting a few days before you issue an alert or a warning, and then bang, you're going to be right. Now look what happens when somebody takes their prediction watch window, like DUTCHSINSE has done, and they change it from 5 days to 10 days. Suddenly, all of these areas here become valid predictions, because he can now say, oh, I'm going to predict a magnitude 5.5 earthquake along the Chilean coast, and his watch period is now 10 days. Well, they have a magnitude 5 earthquake there every 6 days to every 12 days along the blue one here. So his odds of being right are suddenly enormously higher. And here's a map showing magnitude 4.5 earthquakes occurring within a 7-day window. Look at this. In the Japan region, they have magnitude 4.5 earthquakes, more than one a day in the green region here. And just east of India, into Bangladesh area, they have earthquakes there, one every 3.8 days, 4 days, 5 days. This whole region, they have magnitude 4.5 earthquakes so frequently that they would easily encompass any prediction that DUTCHSINSE gives. Similarly for New Zealand region. DUTCHSINSE likes to predict the Italy region. Well, look at that. The area around Italy and Crete and Greece, they're hit so often, his 10-day window of predictions is going to always be right. How many people do you think realize this? And here's what South America looks like. He's going to be bang on all the time, because the entire coast of Central America and South America is covered by these contours, which means that a magnitude 4.5 earthquake happens once a week at least along the entire coast. And if his predictions cover 10 days, well, he's locked that one in a bag. So this map shows the earthquake potential, the frequency of earthquakes, that are 6.5 or larger. How many days between earthquakes that are 6.5 or larger? And you can clearly see that it focuses on an area that is right along the South American coast. This is South America here. It comes up here, and then it makes that bend and goes up towards Central America. I know it doesn't, it's been skewed. The projection here is a little skewed, but this is the South American coast. And these little cells up here, that's where there is no data. Just ignore anything that has little circles in them. That's where there's no data. But the contours you can see here, for example, this inner magenta colored contour at 75.794 days. That means that there are magnitude 6.5 earthquakes within that contour about every 75.7 days. Now, DUTCHSINSE recently predicted, one of his predictions was that there would be a large magnitude earthquake in the 6th area in this region, right in this region. And so I did a little looking on that particular event and discovered that there hadn't been a large earthquake in that area for 65 days or something like that. So he's obviously looking at the stats and seeing that it's overdue for an earthquake, and because the region here seems fairly small and earthquakes tend to follow along fault lines, he simply has to tie the two together. Fault line, contour, statistically this is the area that is overdue for a hit, so he lines up his story so that it predicts an earthquake in that area. And sometimes he's right. So knowing that, perhaps it's a little easier for people to see what's really going on here. He claims that he's capable of predicting these earthquakes, but yet every single one of his predictions is in a statistically significant area where earthquakes happen rather frequently. He departs from that a little bit by sometimes predicting unusually large earthquakes, and out of all of the ones that he predicted during the time that I examined, he predicted a 7.3 in 3 different places, and technically he missed on all of them, but one of them is arguably a hit, and that was the one in the Philippines. Now, the occurrence frequency of really large earthquakes in the Philippines is rather high. They happen fairly often, but not as often as his watch period is. So he had guts to actually forecast that one. And even though he didn't get it right based on the time period, he got the right area right, which should be expected if he's using statistics as a guide. Unfortunately, there isn't enough fact-checking on his work and statistical analysis on his results to be able to say for sure whether or not he's actually capable of predicting the really large earthquakes. He was 33% correct in his predictions during the time that I listened to him and analyzed him from the 1st of January to the 5th of January. He was 33% right. He was 66% wrong. 1/3 of the time he was right. The average probability of him being correct on any of his predictions was 62.25%. So it was better than even odds that he would be right with his predictions during this time. And if these predictions are indicative of the rest of his predictions, as they may or may not be, it's a little hard to tell on such a small sample, but if they are, then he is gaming the system, because his average probability of being correct is higher than 50, which means that he's choosing locations that have a high probability of him being correct. And of those that he was correct on, looking at those that were correct, this one was a hit. He predicted a 5.3 magnitude earthquake, came in as a 5.1, which was pretty darn close. And the area that he predicted it to be in was within 700 kilometers of the actual earthquake, which is pretty good again, except that the probability of him being correct was 129%. The duration of his warning window was 4 days. Well, over 4 days you're going to have an earthquake of that size, so it's a sure hit. And this one here was even odds. He had a 50-50 chance of being right on that one. This one here, he had a 100% chance of being right. This one here, he had a 1 in 5 chance of being right. This one here, he had a 50-50 chance of being right. This one here was a little bit harder. He had a 10% chance of being right. He predicted a large earthquake and a magnitude 6.9 hit. They usually happen one every 77 days. So again, if you time it right, if you watch those areas that haven't had the earthquakes and you time it right, you can get more accurate predictions. And that's how you game the system. So my conclusion is, I think DutchSinse is gaming the system. It's pretty clear that he's using statistics to his advantage. Now, whether Dutch can predict the really large earthquakes more accurately than not remains to be seen. And it would be interesting to actually look at that data to see whether or not there's any truth to that. Some people have told me that he has an 84% accuracy rate. Well, I can confidently say now that that is garbage. If he had an 84% accuracy rate, he should have a higher percentage of hits on my study. But let's wait and see what his performance is like on the bigger earthquakes before we judge too hard.